Hey guys, OG Albina here. Happy 4th of July and welcome to our final Draft League tier list. We're looking at Generation 9. Every Pokemon that is eligible in the Draft League metagame, how they stack up, how good they are, things of the sort. If you guys have enjoyed this series so far and are excited for the final Generation tier list for a little while at the very least, be sure to drop a like on the video as well as subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 5,000 subs by the end of the year, and I can only get there with your support, and I would really appreciate it at the time. Also, if you have any other ideas for a tier list series that's going to be a little bit different than just generational, let me know. We've done typings in the past, so I don't want to do that again. We've gone through generations. Let me know any weekly series that you guys want to see going forward. Gotta find something new after this 9 weeks straight of tier lists, so let me know what you guys want to see. That being said, let's jump right into it. Do you want to do a quick reminder, though? We're not ranking these Pokemon based on how high of points they're worth, right? I'm more so ranking them based on the value that they offer to any given team in their metagame. So let's say I really think Quaxwell is incredible as a one-pointer. I might put him in A or S, whereas I think that, Lokix is terrible at, 9, but whatever it's at. So I put him in D tier. It's not that I think Quaxwell should be a higher points value. I think it's more value for its points, if that makes any sense. Now that we have that out of the way, let's jump into the final one. And first up, we have Meowscarada, or as the kids say, New Weavile. And we're going to go ahead and have our first S tier right off the bat. I mean, they really cooked with the starters this generation, but I think Meowscarada is by far the best. Protean on a Pokemon with as good of coverage as this thing is pretty darn insane. You obviously have your stabs and knockoff plus flower trick, both incredible moves, but we get stab U-turns, triple axles, low kicks, play roughs. I mean, even spikes when we're spiking up. There's really so much that this thing offers. It can spike and T-spike. It gets Sucker Punch for priority. It's great with a band. It's great with boots. It's great as a hazard setter. It's great with a sash as a lead. Really, really incredible Pokemon in a very, very elite speed tier. I have never seen someone draft Meowscarada and not absolutely smash with it. Even if they didn't do good that season, Meowscarada did good. So I think it's definitely worth this S tier slot. I am going to mention Crocalor in D tier. I think he's technically draftable. I wouldn't recommend it. Eviolite fire type, which means weak to rocks. Not great, but unaware, really bulky. If not prepared for aptly, could be a pretty big demon. It's definitely at least worth a draft slot or worth a mention here. Next up, we have Big Dirge. I'm going to put Dirge in B. Might be a little controversial. I think Dirge is just a little too slow for the fast-paced offensive metagame that Gen 9 is. In early Gen, it saw a lot of success as a Terra Captain, right? Being able to be unaware, snowball with Torch Songs, and really, really get out of hand that way and be a great one catch-all defensive check to whatever you needed with unaware and being really bulky with slack off recovery. That's great. But the generation is so inherently offensive that, one, it can get overwhelmed just by raw power sometimes, right? Especially doesn't appreciate taking knockoff, losing its boots, being super effective against if it hasn't Terra, but losing its boots, hazards plus big hits. It's going to be in 2-hit KO range pretty soon, right? But second, the Terra thing, I think it's great as a Terra Captain, but very often you want that blitz all-out offense mon to be your Terra Captain so that you can overwhelm those fatter pieces like Skeletors. There is value in drafting a more defensive Terra Pokemon, but I think very often Dirge is not the best option to be your Terra Captain, depending on what you've drafted. Now, there are instances where 100% it's great, and that's why it's in B tier. It's not going to be a bad decision. But I think that it saw a lot of usage early on in the gen where people were kind of feeling out the meta, feeling out what's good, what's bad, having that good defensive check was just comfortable for a lot of people. Whereas now, I think that you're better off just, tearing your King Gambit, who's also bulky, but can win games a little bit easier. There is a snowball potential of Torch Song, though, so keep that in mind. Good coverage, too. Got a Luring Voice, Earth Power, I mean, pretty darn good coverage. I want to talk about Snowball Mons, though. We have another A-tier Pokemon, or another high-tier Pokemon in A-tier in Quaquaval. I think that this is one of the best Snowball Pokemon, and, in my opinion, the best noob killer in Generation 9 Draft League. By noob killer, I don't mean that in a mean way, but I mean new players really, really tend to struggle with this Pokemon, with Aqua Step boosting its speed, and Moxie boosting its attack, getting Swords Dance and Bulk Up, getting Rapid Spin to boost speed as well. This thing can get really overwhelming, whether it be Swords Dance offensive sets, whether it be Choice Band variants, whether it be really, really fat Bulk Up sets, and being a lot more defensive than people would typically prep for. Makes this thing very, very difficult for a lot of teams to deal with, and it super, super snowballs. Spoilers, fun fact, we play Quaquaval in week 2 of BBR, upcoming here against Amel, and it was a pain in the builder. An absolute pain, because one of those Pokemon, especially with Moxie and Aqua Step, it's very hard to justify sacking a low health Pokemon to it, because then you're giving it a +1/+1, and you gotta deal with +1/+1 in Quaquaval. That's really scary. Also has Aqua Jet priority, Ice Spinner, Brave Bird, Knockoff, so great coverage that needs U-turn as well to gain momentum. I mean, really does have a ton of great tools and is a really, really good Pokemon on top of that, like, you know, win con potential. Lechonk S tier. No, I'm just kidding. Only if you're Amel. But this isn't an Amel tier list. Unfortunately, Oink alone, we're just going to pick the first one. Disgusting looking Pokemon. I hate it. I think it's very gross, and they ruined Lechonk, but also very, very bad. It has like the niche of being like a bulky low tier normal, but I promise you there are better bulky low tier normals. In fact, there's a million of them. So please draft another one. I'm not going to talk about Oink alone for a very long time. Next up, we have Big Spidops. It's gonna go D tier. I've drafted Spidops before, and it's actually done well for me in the past. I used it against Amel as like a Sticky Webber / like Toad Scroll pivot because Toad Scroll couldn't do anything with Insomnia, which is really cool. Definitely a really fun mon in that regard. But I'm also, if you guys have been around the channel for a long time, not a big fan of Sticky Web. And this is a Sticky Web guy, and I just think that the playstyle is not very good in Generation 9 when we have boots on everything. If I'm playing Sticky Webs, I'm probably just putting boots on the guys I don't want to get webbed, right? So, not a big webs guy, so inherently a Pokemon that doesn't offer much else besides webs and like hazards and like spikes, which is a cool niche. It's not for me. Alright, next up is Low-Kicks. Low-Kicks is going to go in B tier. This guy is incredibly strong. I mean, not a very high base stat total, but Bug plus Dark, having both access to First Impression and Sucker Punch's priority, you turning around, knocking everything off. I mean, this guy is a strong breaker if you can get it in. I've played Terra Low-Kicks in the past, and Terra Dark knockoffs and Terra Bug First Impressions are nukes. This thing can be very, very scary. The stats are pretty underwhelming. Speed is pretty underwhelming, but when you have great priority like that, and you don't have, like, real resistances, you're gonna smoke through teams. And even like Swords Dance, I've seen Swords Dance smoke through teams too. A little bit harder position, but you can do it if you build the right team around it. So definitely think it's a pretty cool Pokemon. Definitely deserves this B tier shout out. Next up we have Palmont, a Pokemon that I was thinking was gonna be a lot better this generation. It might end up bumping up to low B, but I'm gonna put it in C tier for now. Now, in most leagues I've seen Revival Blessing is typically banned, but actually as time has gone on, I've seen it allowed a lot more, and I can kind of understand why. It takes a lot to be able to click a Revival Blessing with a Palmont, and you're basically sacking it off in that instance, because Palmont isn't known for its staying power and or bulk, right? So I definitely think that it's a little bit suspect in that regard. Can be definitely very strong, and I've seen Kurt in particular use it super, super well. Don't think it's bad, but I think in a generation where there's so many good offensive fightings, very often it's harder to draft Palmont. I think it's great in low tier, though. That is one thing. In low tier draft, phenomenal Pokemon. Next up, we have Mousehold. Mousehold's going to be a low C tier Pokemon at the end of the day. I'm not a fan of it in the regard of, like, it just being helmet bait, right? It's one of those mons, like, if you don't prep and respect it and slap a helmet on your normal resist, you're going to have a bad time. But otherwise, it's not good, you know? It's just not very good. You can go protective pads, but then that population bomb, which is why you're bringing it to get off those 10 hit population bombs, are very, very unlikely to hit. I don't remember the exact number. I think it's like 30% chance to hit all 10 without a wide lens on it. So you really want to run that wide lens every time because it calculates like triple axle in the sense that it's hit, calculate accuracy, hit, calculate accuracy. Ah, you missed because it didn't get that 10%. So like when you stacked it up 10 times, it's very unlikely for you to get all 10. So it's kind of hard to justify running any item other than wide lens if you want to do what you want to do reliably. And if not, you're not doing it reliably. So does it matter if you're not getting hit with Rocky Helmet? Because you're probably getting blown up as the Pokemon lives after only taking 3 hits or 2 hits or 5 hits, right? Because you're still a Mousehold at the end of the day. Tidy Up is a cool niche. So like it's still draftable, but I think it's a Pokemon that really struggles when people aren't super aware of it. I don't know. Next up, we have... This is weird because we start off the generation with some bangers, and then we have some shitters at the beginning of this deck. It's going to be Douchbun. I have seen this guy do some cool things. I think it's really cool having a fairy immune to fire. Definitely cool. It yawns. It wishes, but really only wishes for itself. What I say when I mean that is, like, the HP number is so low that it's very hard to, like, say you're wishing up your team, I guess. It's very, very hard to say so. It's pretty darn weak in that regard. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in C. Functions as a decently okay defensive fairy. I don't want to hear it checks Chi-Yu in the comments because I want you to calc the move Psychic or even just like specs Dark Pulse into it. Does not take the hits well. Do not tell me Douchbun is a Chi-Yu counter. I will yell very loud. But yeah, I'm going to move Palm up to C tier or B tier by the way, because looking at this deck's ahead, I'm not... We'll keep it in C. We'll adjust. Nope. B. It's gonna be B. It's gonna be B. Because I see another Pokemon I want to put at the top of C tier. Okay, next up is Arboliva, which is also gonna go in C tier. This isn't the top of C tier, but it's gonna go in C tier nonetheless. I think Seed Sower was an interesting ability, right? Get hit with a move, get Grass to Train. Cool. I wish it just had Grass to Train. would be a little bit more better of a niche if it could just automatically set it up, opposed to having to position that get hit by a move aspect of it. So I think that's a little bit tough for Arboliva, but very surprisingly bulky, good coverage in normal grass ground, right? It hits a lot. I believe it also gets fairy, can strength sap up and be annoying. Really not that bad of a low tier Pokemon, and definitely worth drafting. I've seen some people pop up with it. I know in low tier Terra, I remember AIM did really well with this thing. I think it was in PPL last year. So it has that aspect to it, which can also be really cool. Definitely a really annoying Pokemon. I wouldn't say it's great though. All right, next up is Big Billy. Speaking of Mr. Pokemon and SPL, funny guy. I love his haircut. That is oh my gosh, I sound like a poser right now. Josuke from JoJo's. Dude, I almost forgot which JoJo was. And someone was gonna make fun of me in the comments. One of the two JoJo fans that watch my videos or something. Funny guy, can hit hard, but just draft Raptor, please. Okay, next up we have Knucklestack, who's also gonna go in D tier, but again, niche guy. If you have like 2 points left, like man, I'm weak to Ghost. I have no Ghost resist. Need a Rocker. I need a Flying resist. Whatever. Draft you some Knucklestack. He's a cute guy, pretty cool. Does his thing. On top of that, we have Garganacci, as they say. We're going to put this guy in B tier. Again, a Pokemon that saw a lot of traction early gen with Terra and Salt Cure, which is great. And I think the upside of Garganacl is awesome, especially if your opponent doesn't really prep for it all that much. If they don't do that, then it can be really, really annoying. But very often a Covert Cloak is all you need to stop this thing from Salt Curing down. In fact, I actually think the best Garganacl sets are like offensive sets like Assault Vest or like Curse 2 attacks in the sense of like Stone Edge Earthquake. That's pretty cool. It's a good rocker as well. I think people struggle with Garganacl when they end up running Salt Cure and they figure out what the Covert Cloakmon is, and then they're like, damn, my Garganacl does nothing until that guy's dead. Even you could force aggressive doubles, which is cool, but or you can like click neutral earthquakes on it, which is nice, but yeah, overall not the best Pokemon in the world in my opinion. All right, next up we have Big Armarouge. I'm gonna go ahead and put this guy again in B tier. I think this guy has some cool upside potential with Terra. We saw Vepsis in low tier in LTM go on a kill streak with this thing, winning finals with it, doing a great job with it. And I think it has that potential in standard as well. Again, it's hard to justify tearing it, but I think it's one of those niche mons. If like you can fit an offensive fire on your team because you can, hell yeah, do it, man. But otherwise, a little bit hard to fit. I feel the same way about Cerulege, but it's a little bit better, especially because it's more physically offensive. It has Shadow Sneak as priority, and I love the Ghost Fire typing. Really strong offensively. Really strong offensively. That typing is so definitely a great Pokemon. Next up, we have God Bellybolt. Dude, I want to put this guy in A tier so bad. I love him. Okay, I'm gonna put Belly in A tier. Hear me out. I'm gonna get screamed at this for this one. I'm putting Belly in A tier in the context of you're playing in a league, right? You get 2 Terra captains. You have, Terra Iron Bundle or something, and then on top of that, you have Terra points for a lower tier Terra captain. What are you gonna do? Get a nice defensive piece that can soft check the entire game. That's not expensive to where you can fit it with your high tier Terra, right? You can't, afford something like a Skeletor to be your second Terra captain because you have a certain amount of points you can use. Bellybolt is that guy. He's him. Getting extra toxic, having Muddy Water to hit grounds if you're not tearing him, bolting around, static and electromorphosis are both really cool abilities, and is a great defensive check to whatever you need it to be, either as a pure electric type, only having one weakness, or as that Terra Water, Terra Fairy, Terra, whatever it might be, is going to be very good at that job. I have had great success with Belly. I've seen so many people have so much success with Bellybolt. Incredibly naturally bulky, reliable recovery, bolts around and maintains initiative, and just sits in front of things, man. And one of the few Pokemon in Gen 9 that has Toxic, and I think that's a very valuable trait as a defensive piece. So, therefore, Bellybolt deserves A tier. Bam! Alright, next up we have a Pokemon that I've been pretty vocal about not liking a ton, but I think it objectively deserves a B tier slot, and that's going to be Kilowattrel. Now, I think Kilowattrel is pretty bad without Terra, and again, if it's a Pokemon where you can afford Kilowattrel as a low tier Terra and then a high tier Terra, I think that's a valid pickup. I think it really struggles in damage output, though. Really struggles in damage output. However, the offensive and defensive typing of Electric Flying is incredible. Very good typing. Also fits well on, like, rain teams, on weather teams. If you need, like, a budget, offensive flying, it can fit on those kinds of teams. It's very hard to fit, very hard to justify drafting, but not a bad Pokemon at all. So I think B tier is about fine. I like Palmont more, though. Okay. You know, I like Palmon a lot more. I'm gonna put it at the top of C tier. Streets might be mad about that one. Next up, we have Mabaustiff. A really, really funny guy. I'm gonna put him in C tier. I remember when I was helping, I think it was Nexus mock for P4G last season. I did a mock with him where he brought like Scarf and Mabaustiff, and I switched in a Palmot to it, and I took like 60% because of Stakeout Crunch. Guy can be really strong with Stakeout. Hard to position, tough speed tier, not very bulky, but still a very, very strong Pokemon. Stakeout is an incredible ability, and is that good? For a reason. Very, very solid. Okay, next up, what do we have? Big Grafaiai. Another Pokemon I like, low-key. I'm gonna put him in C. I love this guy. I think Prankster Encore is always gonna be a valuable tool. It can U-turn around, maintain momentum, knock off. It can also Poison Touch. It can SD Unburden sets as well. Like 3 incredible abilities in Poison Touch, Unburden, and Encore. The stats are not there. However, everything else really is. The move pool is pretty fire. Poison Armor is a little bit of an interesting type, but still pretty solid nonetheless. Alright, next up we got the Bulls. The Bulls. We're gonna go ahead and just rank them all together. Which ones I think are best. We're gonna go ahead and put C tier, Tauros regular. I think it's good. There's way better fightings. There's actually 2 better versions of it, literally. So I think that's valid. Then we're gonna go ahead. Ooh, this is hard because I feel like these guys are good, especially with low tier Pokemon. In low tier, I think they're incredible. I think it's a little bit harder to justify drafting them. We're gonna put them in B tier, both together. Fireball because it's better offensively. Water Ball is a little bit better defensively, but I think Fireball's still good defensively. So we're gonna put it a little bit higher. Solid Pokemon. A little bit tough to justify drafting on some teams though, and especially as like your Water and Tauros Water case. So yeah, good Pokemon, but not gonna put it any higher. Big Brambleghast, we're gonna put him in C tier. I actually think he's low-key kind of fire. Good Rapid Spinner, since the ghosts don't want to come in on you and take a fatty Poltergeist to the face, especially if they're Kashibberry Goldango. But also priority, Shadow Sneak, Strength Sap, it gets spikes itself. Good low tier value. Again, the base stats kind of lacking. The design is stupid too. I don't like the way he looks. But regardless, very solid Pokemon. I promise you, we're gonna get some A tier Pokemon here soon. I promise you. Okay, next up, we have Big Toedscruel. Another C tier Pokemon, in my opinion. This thing would probably be like high B if it had even an unusable, like, non-factor ability, but Mycelium Might is really, really tough, man. Like, it's a really, really brutal ability. Going last on SAS moves is tough when you have access to pretty fast Spore, when you have access to pretty fast Spikes and T-Spikes, and, you know, things of the sort. Solid move pool otherwise, too. I mean, like, just generally solid move pool. Grass Ground isn't a bad typing either. It's just really, really crippled by that ability. I'm gonna go ahead and move Tauros and Mabaustiff down. I think they're good and draftable, but not great. Okay, next up we got Big Cloth. I'm gonna put this guy in D tier. Unfortunately, despite having the best ability in the game in Regenerator, not very good. It can, you know, set up rocks and, you know, be annoying in that regard and regen around. I know that AV's done well in the past in some leagues. I know that Joey used it really well in P4G. I know Keegan used it pretty okay in LTM. And there's even like anger point shenanigans that you can pull with like Sash lead sets, and that's pretty cool. Also good Sword Stance and Trailblaze, so cool options there. It's just, again, the base stats are really lacking, so it's hard to justify using that guy in such a Powercraft meta. So, yeah, that's where we're gonna have him. Alright, next up we have Scovillain. Shoutouts to Mr. King L5. This guy's also going in D tier though. Not very draftable. Strong in Sun, for sure. However, this is the generation of Sun. I mean, there's an entire section of Pokemon from here to here that all get a stat boost in the Sun. And then there's a couple more hiding out below. So because of that alone, it's very hard to draft Scovillain unless he's like in a super low tier Terra league that you're allowed to Terra with him. But yeah, I don't know. Otherwise, kind of hard to justify drafting that dude. Alright, next up, we got Rabaska. I have never seen this dude drafted. Also gonna put it down here in D tier. Maybe if you allow it to Revive a Blessing, you put it up. But I just don't have the knowledge to know what this guy does, because I've never seen it do nothing, personally. But yeah. Next up, we have a Spothra, and this is gonna be a Spothra in A tier, considering that it can Terra. Again, big Snowball Mon. Big Noob Killer Mon. If you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to prepare for a Spothra, it's going to be very annoying. And it is a very difficult Mon to prepare for. However, if you do, in a counter team format, cheesy like Speed Boost, Stored Power, Wincon Mons are a little bit tougher to pull off because it's harder to, you know, get them, it's harder for you to position them in front of your opponent. So I think it's definitely an A tier Pokemon because of that win con potential, but still not great. Wugtrio, you're going down here in D tier. Goodbye, Wugtrio, you suck. I did accidentally skip Tinkaton, who's going to be our 4th A tier Pokemon. I think that the Steel Fairy typing, alongside Knockoff, Encore, and Rocks, and a great speed tier, make this a great value pick in Gen 9 draft. Really solid. Also, T-Waves, it can even Swords Dance in some matchups. I've seen matchups where Swords Dance Tinkaton can go crazy, and really anti-meta with its defensive typing, checking a lot of the top end of the board, especially all of that top end dark types. I mean, the one Pokemon we have in S tier right now is hard-walled by Tinkaton. Hard-walled by Tinkaton. There's, like, nothing it can do to hit it other than, like, neutral, like, Protean moves, which, like, if you're defensive, you're gonna take those on pretty well. So, yeah, I think it definitely deserves an A tier slot based on its value alone. Alright, next up, we have Bombardier. I've never seen this guy drafted. I'm gonna put him in D tier. Kind of hard to justify putting him anywhere else if I've never seen him drafted before, outside of, like, low tier. I think Kyle had him. Wouldn't say it's the best Pokemon in the world. I think it's cool to have 3 stab typings, but it's a stab typing, you know? Alright, so, I mean, getting extra rock stab is cool. Getting Stealth Rock with Dark Flying as a typing is cool. Dark Flying is a great typing in general. So maybe the guy just needs to be explored a little bit more, but why not draft Amanda Buzzard, Galarian Moltres instead, who are in the decks, right? So, I don't know, maybe that's just me. We have our 2nd S tier Pokemon. That's, of course, going to be Big Palafin. Now, if Palafin's going to be behind Meowscarada, no, I gotta put it above. I was going to say, assuming it can Terra. It shouldn't be allowed to Terra. It should always be Terra banned. That guy's super broken with Terra. Another Pokemon that I think really actually requires a high skill ceiling to use well, because a lot of times people think, okay, I lead it, I pop the form, but that can put you in a really bad spot turn 1. And if you don't go in with a plan to pop the form, you might sit in the background with this guy the entire game, and then this Pokemon feels terrible and like a point sucker. So I think it actually really requires good building and good sequencing from the builder and user of Palafin to pop the form, but not lose initiative or lose too much initiative in doing so. Finding a free opportunity to do so, and often you're going to have to do that by setting that up. So, yeah, I think Palafin has a high skill ceiling, but when it's used well, it's very good at job. So, yeah, it's gonna go in S tier, above Meow. Alright, next up we have Revroom, my goat. Another low tier Terracat, and I think is low-key a demon, and I think because of that alone, he gets to go in B tier. Also has some cool other techs. I can Toxic Spike, I can Parting Shot out. Has really good offensive coverage, and when you let this thing Terra, I think with Shift Gear, it's actually a big threat to a lot of teams. Big ups to Big Rev. I like that guy. Cyclizar is going to be next. Definitely a B tier Pokemon. At its finest. We're going to put him decently high, though. I think this guy definitely has some good value as a, like, low-tier, you know, knockoff spam and rapid spinning U-turning guy with regen. Fits on a lot of teams like that. I know in low-tier Terra, Jason used it well last season, mostly in a defensive role, whereas people thought it was going to be more offensive. It can also shift gear and do things like that. It has great coverage overall, too, so it's very seldom passive. It can be a very good Pokemon overall. Like, I like Cyclizar. Good mon. Alright. Limit is going to get a shout-out here in D tier, because I think it is technically draftable. And I think it's better than these guys behind it. But it basically does what Glamora does, but way worse. And that is why Glamora is going to be up here in A tier. Our BBR teammate, our round 3 pick recently. Love this guy. Not only is it one of the best hazard centers in Draft League history, with both Rocks, Spikes, and T-Spikes, its ability means that if you hit it with a physical move, T-Spikes are going up, which makes it very annoying to play around, and also very annoying for a lot of teams, where you don't have to bring T-Spikes explicitly. Maybe they have a great round of poison, maybe that poison gets taken out, maybe they have to pivot around weirder because they attacked into your Glamora and T-Spikes are up. It might put you in an advantageous position where they either have to pivot around weird, or you get a poison on something that you didn't even plan on getting poisoned, which is always a good thing, right? Forces a lot of boots, and offensive sets are great. Getting Meteor Beam in the most recent DLC made Rock Polish sets so much better. Spoilers, again, for week 2, we're bringing a Rock Polish Meteor Beam Glamora against Amel, because he doesn't have a Steel type. So there's some matches where he can pop off, and again, has great coverage in, like, on top of the stabs, in, like, Earth Power, Dazzling Gleam, Energy Ball. I think those are the main ones. But good coverage overall, right? Shouts to Neolego. This is like cooler Knee, in my mind. Knee has other things as well. Alright, big Orthworm. I'm gonna go ahead and put this guy here in C tier. This guy gets a lot of love for no reason, in my opinion. I think he has really bad stats and really bad spit up stat. It is awesome to have a Steel type with a ground immunity, though. It's always gonna be a great thing. Great hazards. If you're legal out Shed Tail, then that's another added thing to it. But I also don't think he's a great Shed Tail user, because it's very easy to taunt or foot below him. So, I think he struggles there. I think he is worse Steelix. Even though Steelix doesn't get spikes, he's worse Steelix. That's how I see him. So that's what it'll be for me. Next up, we have Big Houndstone. I think this guy deserves like a low B tier shout out, right? This is assuming Last Respect is banned, because the move is broken, shouldn't be allowed. However, still good value out of this Pokemon. Not necessarily it's like Sandrush Sweeper, which it definitely can do. I think it very much so more so thrives as like a low tier fighting resist. As a really, really bulky Pokemon with Fluffy, Pain Split, Willow, things like that, being really bulky and annoying as a ghost type that, you know, can function as. So I think low B tier is about good for him. Alright, next up is Flamigo. Another Pokemon that's like, it's cool. I don't think Flamigo is bad. I think it has a pretty great stab combination alongside Scrappy. It's just there are better fighting types in the game, and there's so many fighting types in Paldea, it's hard to justify drafting Flamigo. There's just better Pokemon for its point value. So, it's hard to do so. So Titan, you suck. I hate this guy. Did he almost beat me week 1 of BBR? Yeah. Do I hate him? Yeah. I really thought he was going to be awesome this gen. Really isn't. The potential is there, it just does not do enough damage. The pure ice typing is always going to be the pure ice typing, so it's very hard for me to justify drafting Slush Rush guys. I know some of you are going to be like, I swept with the Belladrum set one time. Sick. I want you to use this guy for like an extended period of time against good players. It's not going to do anything. I promise you. I know it looks promising, good attack stat, Slush Rush, Snow Buff, all that stuff. I promise you. Just use the Titan against good players for a full season, and you're going to be sorely disappointed. This guy is terrible. I'm a big Titan hater. Titan's biggest hater, some might say. Next up we have Veluza. I think Veluza deserves like a top of B tier kind of, or D tier kind of slot, not B tier. And this is like Flayaway is like kind of like a Shell Smash, but it's worse Shell Smash, right? In the sense that like you're taking away half your health, which makes it kind of hard to set up a guy like this. But I know Jack used it really well in P4G recently, so that's cool. Obviously, it's in a low tier setting. Which definitely makes it better. It gets recovery, which is pretty cool. I think it gets some other stuff as well, but really it's like sharpness boosted, you know, flayaway attacks, and if you get it set up, it can be really, really strong. It's just kind of hard to set it up, in my opinion, and kind of not worth the trouble when you can, like, you know, screens up for probably a better Pokemon. Next up, we have Don Bozo. I really don't like this Pokemon. I'm going to put him at the top of C tier. I actually think Dondozo is best in the sense of like what we talked about in our BBR Week 1 team build. If you haven't watched that, is that I was really scared of like Choice Band Dondozo, Assault Vest Dondozo. I think it's very bad when you see Curse variants, Rest Talk variants. I think it's very passive, very exploitable, and kind of just a sitting blob on the field very often. I mean, Unaware is a great ability, so that's cool, but I think it can be exploited pretty heftily. Next up, we have Annihilate. Now, that's going to go up here in S tier. Especially with Terra, this thing is an absolute snowball machine. I mean, I'm sure you've seen a couple mons this gen and kind of have that, like, Mickey setup win game potential. And I think Annihilate is one of those guys with Bulk Up and Rage Fist and Taunt and Encore and Rest variants, Resto Chesto. I mean, it's going to be a big nuisance. But on top of that, there's also Scarf variants. I know in the last year or so, a big set that's popped up on Annihilate is Scarf, and not just in VGC, in singles. And you'd very often see it with like Terra Ghost. You pivot in, take a hit, you turn out, you might throw off strong Terra Blast or things like that. But Ghost fighting is also just unresisted offensively. So you don't always have to go like the Max Spadef Bulk Up variants that are a little bit slower to play around or to play with. You can also just click a button with it, which I also think is cool. Also gets like, you know, Final Gambit and Stealth Rock and things like that. Now, I don't recommend you bring Stealth Rock and Annihilate, but it can, which is a boon or a good thing for it. And I think that's why it's a better Snowball Mon than these guys. Is I think it's a little bit more versatile and a little bit tougher to navigate for the, you know, for the average player opposed to, you know, these guys. But so I think Annihilate's pretty darn good if you use it correctly. All right, next up, Big Tattoo Geary, who I might have skipped. I don't know. This guy's gonna go probably at the top of C tier as well. Again, really struggles with stats, but Dragon plus Water is great. It gets Magic Fly, gets Rapid Spin, can recover for some reason. But its move pool outside of that falls off a cliff. So I think that's why it's down here. Bad move pool outside of those initial, like, kind of 4 moves. And really, really low base stat roll. Really low base stat roll. So it's going to go down pretty low. Alright, next up we have Big Claude. I think Claude deserves a B tier shout out. I'm not a big Claude guy because I think it's potentially pretty exploitable and passive, but it has 2 great abilities, and Water Absorb and Unaware. Really, really cool, you know, niche being a ground type with Water Absorb, especially with a bunch of hazards. It can set up all 3 layers of hazards. It can curse and be annoying that way. It also just toxic things. And again, it's a good Pokemon on balanced teams. You just have to be very careful about how you play Clodsire, and very often you're gonna have to slap a Mental Herb on it. Remember, we had it on a team in DPL, and I think it like ran Mental Herb like most of the times it came. If I'm remembering correctly, at least since I got picked up at mid. I know it was like kind of required to always have a mental herb on that guy, because he's very much a taunt fodder. And like the setup sweeper can beat you if it's just gonna taunt you and stuff like that way, because you're really not a very strong Pokemon. That's for sure. All right, next up we got Big Fridge Giraffe. I actually think this guy is pretty darn cool. I'm gonna go ahead and put him in C tier. I'm also gonna move this guy down pretty considerably right there. I don't know, I had him at the top. But Frigoraph, what do we think about Frigoraph? I think it's very bulky. Great Wish Passer with a fatty HP stat. Good Ghost Check. It's a bit tough though, being a Psychic that's not, that doesn't resist fighting. Oh, I think that aspect of it is a bit tough, personally. And makes it kind of hard to justify drafting it as like a bulky-ish Psychic. But good utility, can set up and win. Good abilities in Armor Tail and Sap Sipper, which are both pretty cool. So, yeah, overall, pretty solid Pokemon. Alright, next up, who do we got? We got Big Dunsparce, my guy here. This guy's going to the top of B. Very similar reasons for like Belly Bolt, but it's a little bit more expensive nowadays. So I think that is why I don't have it up there in A tier with Belly Bolt. We actually might end up moving Belly Bolt down to B. Looking at these Paradox guys. Yeah, I think Belly Bolt's gonna go down to B. But I like these guys for very similar reasons. Main reason being, again, you have a couple extra points, low tier Terra Captain, Dunsparce, catch one, check to whatever you need. But Dunsparce is a little more offensive in the sense that it can set up with a Coil or a Calm Mind and win the game, but it can also Stealth Rock and Glare and Toxic and Roost and be annoying in that regard, which I think is awesome. Incredible move pool because it's based off of, a Gen 2 guy who has a million moves in Dunsparce. So, pretty cool guy. Love that dude. Alright, okay, this is just like Gen 7. I want you to take a mental screenshot of this image right here. We only have from right where you guys see the Dunsparce and down. That's it. We are about to have so many S and A tier Pokemon. We're gonna have so many. I don't think you realize how many we're gonna have. Let's start off with Big King Gambino, who's going right in S tier. The best fairy type of all time. It's not a fairy type. Obviously, a great Terra Captain. SD plus Supreme Overlord or Defiant. Just smokes through teams. Strong sucker punches, and it's just so damn bulky. Forces crazy 50-50s with Terras a lot of the time as well. Tearing out of that 4x fighting weakness, which is really the only downside to its normal form. So it doesn't even always have to be a Terramon or always have to Terra in a matchup. I had Terra King Gambit and Terra Ments in the league. My King Gambit died, but I didn't really need a Terra in the game, and I swapped with Terra Shalons later because it's that flexible, it's that good. Also can rock, and also like Thunder Wave, and function really well with an Assault Vest and do things like that. I mean, just an absolutely incredible Pokemon. Terra King Gambino is him, for lack of a better term. Speaking of him, oh my gosh, dude, this is gonna be a crazy list, bro. Dude, there's gonna be so many good Pokemon. Where did my friend go? Did I lose him? Yo, where's Great Tusk? There he is. There's my guy. We're gonna put him right up here in S tier next to King Gambino. Again, just an incredible Pokemon. Shoutouts to new Landers. Landorus Tusk, my guy. Obviously, great offensively. Ground fighting is really hard to switch into, especially on top of rock coverage, dark coverage, ice coverage, fairy coverage, right? You also get Side Shock for some reason. Best rapid spinner in the game. Really good at getting hazards off the field. Really good at bulking up and winning the game that way. And on top of that, it can rock. It can also body press and be more defensive. So you have a Pokemon that can be Wall Breaker with a Choice Band, or a Booster Energy, or an Assault Vest. Or you have a defensive Leftovers or Rocky Helmet on to check physical attackers to the utmost degree. Also great with Rock Street attacks. Again, it is always just going to do its job and hit like a freaking truck. And because of that, going to the next tier. Alright, on to the next Big Screen Tail, who's probably going to go at the top of A tier. It's going to take a lot for me not to put this guy in S tier. Really love me some Screen Tail. The ultimate utility mon. No offenses to be had, but it's not passive, because not only is it incredibly bulky, it's incredibly fast, and I think that is what makes Screen Tail good, because from there, you can Encore, you can T-Wave, you can stop things in that regard. You can even, like, protect disabled sets, which are really annoying. You pass crazy fat wishes, you can even Calm Mind and win the game, and you have great coverage to the point of, like, yeah, you might, not 2K or Oko, whatever you want to check, but you're damn well going to prevent him from subbing if you really want to, especially with Encore and all the coverage you get. So I think Screen Tail, if used by the right player, is great. Really incredible Pokemon. honestly. So, yeah, goes up here in A tier. Debatably S tier. Next up, we have Big Brute Bonnet. Big Brute Busy. Brute Busy is going to go down here in probably C tier. I think this Pokemon actually has a lot of potential. It's just that it's slow and it has that nasty 4x U-turn weakness, which is a little bit tough in Draft League. But I think like a decently fast Spore, really strong sucker punches, and then strong like, crunches, and I think Seed Bomb is its grass type. I don't know if it gets Leaf Blade. It might get Leaf Blade. I'm not 100% sure. But still is a decently strong Pokemon. And, really puts some pressure on some opposing teams, and a little bit more of an offensive Swarmon like Breloom, which is cool. Just a really shitty typing. Alright, next up, we have Fluttermane, who's banned. We're not going to talk about Fluttermane. Don't make me do it. Next up, we have Slitherwing, which is going to go at the top of B tier. I think like 6 months ago, I would have put this guy in A tier. I think he's hard to fit. I think, again, there are just better fighting types a lot of time, but solid defensive fighting, right? You turning around, Will-O-Wisping, Warning Send, but also offensively. First Impression, Close Combat, Earthquake, Flare Blitz, Bulk Up, Trailblaze, Flame Charge, things like that. I think that its speed tier kind of holds it back a little bit, but other than that, really strong Pokemon and fits on a lot of teams pretty well, so despite the bug fighting typing. Shout out to him and Heracross. Really strong typing combination offensively. Next up, we have Big Andy Shocks. He's going to go here in probably low A tier, if I had to guess. Yeah, I think he's pretty considerably better than everything in B tier. Electric plus Ground is decently annoying to switch into for some teams. Grabs some pretty nice volts. A lot of ground types don't want to come and take a strong Earth Power. I think it's a great Terra Captain, too. I think people really sleep on Terra Andy Shocks. With Terra Ice, he's a Damon. I know he's, like, absolutely ravaged low tier scenes before he was, like, pretty universally Terra banned. But also spikes and rocks and thunder waves, and it's just a big nuisance in that regard. Really solid ground type. Does his job, puts some damage on some things, and sets up hazards, which is always a good thing. Also flying resist, which is always, a benefit to him on like this. Next up, we have Iron Treads. Iron Treads is also going to go up here in S tier. Both Dawn Fan Paradox forms being some of the best Draft League Pokemon in history. Who would have thunk it? But this thing is great. Again, one of the best rapid spinners ever. Gets off hazards very reliably, and isn't like as much of an offensive powerhouse as Tusk, but still hard to switch into. Think Excadrill, right? Stabs aren't dealt with very well, especially when you put on top of rock coverage, bug coverage, and Mega Horn, Ice Spinner, and Knockoff. Like, really strong Pokemon, and really difficult for some teams to switch into. Sometimes you just run like a choice band Iron Treads and put on a lot of damage. It's great with an Assault Vest, great with booster energy. Also rocks really reliably. Again, just does his job and does it well. He has a thing that he does, and he's good at it. Next up, we have Iron Bundle. This is assuming Iron Bundle is Terra banned, by the way. I'm going to go ahead and put him in low S. Very strong Pokemon, but you got to hit those Hydros, and I think that alone really kind of turns a lot of people off to Big Bubbledore. But if he does hit his Hydro Pumps, it's great. I think he's much better as a facilitator, flip turn / U-turn guy, getting in the rest of your offense, opposed to being the centerpiece to a team. As someone who drafted him as a centerpiece to a team, he ended up being the facilitator for my round 2, 3, 4, and 5 picks. pretty consistently. So, all right, next up, I think you guys know where he's going. Quick, throw a little prayer up to our Lord and Savior Iron Hands, because my guy is going up here in S tier. I love these Melmetal type Bill Mons. The guys that come in, do crazy damage, but don't fucking die at all. Those are my guys, and Iron Hands is the perfect example of that. One of my favorite Pokemon to use in Draft League in Gen 9 because of that fact. Absolutely glued together our BBR team that we won with last season, and it was very evident saving us in a ton of games. I mean, even in round 1 of playoffs, it clutched up and lived a Life Orb Mamoswine Earthquake comfortably. It wasn't even a roll, and OHKO'd that guy back and won us the freaking game. So that's Big Iron Hands for you. That's my dude. He holds and he does damage. That's great. Alright, next up is Big Juggy Wuggy. I actually like this guy a lot. I'm gonna go ahead and put him in A tier. I think is again, a guy, if you can fit Terra Jugu on your team, he can be really strong, has incredible coverage, booster speed or special attack, can use turn around, and Dark Flying is an incredible offensive typing. It's really annoying. You can even knock off your opposing, check, so that you can break it down a little bit better later if it's an Assault Vest variant or something like that. So, I like that guy a lot. He's pretty dope. Alright, next up. Who do we got? We got Big Iron Moth. Another Pokemon that's gonna go in A tier. You guys seeing a pattern here with these guys? Iron Moth is gonna go here in A tier. I actually really like this guy with Terra. I used him in the BBR season. I forget, was it season 5? 5 or 6? I used Terra Moth. great with Terra. I think it's a little bit mediocre without Terra, but with Terra, this guy's a demon, great wall breaker, fast, strong, crazy coverage, and Fire Dance is a great way of just, you know, compounding boosts. Thank God he didn't get Quiver. I think he would have been super broken with Quiver, but thankfully, didn't get it. I guess thankfully or unthankfully if you're a big fan of this guy. Next up is Brian Hands. I mean, just for the sheer disappointment, I'm putting this guy down at the bottom of C tier. You're barely better than Veluza, and that's saying something. You're Mecha Tyranitar, and you're barely better than Veluza. I think Obo probably deep down really regrets his round 1 Iron Hand, or Brian Thorns. I said Iron Hands. Brian Hands. This is Brian Thorns. Really, really terrible Pokemon. Has a great move pool, but its stats plus its terrible typing defensively. Rock Electric is abysmal. It's very bad on a Pokemon this slow. So it's going to go down there in C tier. Doesn't do what you want it to do. It loses to every ground ever. And guess what's on every team? Every ground ever. So yeah, good luck, buddy. Next up, we have Big Baxcalibur. Big Baxington's going to go up here in S tier. A Pokemon that is very consistently Terra banned now. I think it was very broken with Terra, but I think while it's still very good now, I think it does struggle a little bit without Terra because of that ice typing. And it's a little bit more exploited in that sense, but still a very good Pokemon. And it's going to go up here in S tier. Strong with SD, strong with Dragon Dance, even just Choice Band variants can do a lot of damage to a team. Next up is Golden Joe. Golden Joe is going to go up here in S tier, probably right behind Brian Treads. Really, really solid Pokemon. One of the best abilities of all time in Good as Gold, just being immune to status. Completely blocking Hazard Removal. I think D-Ray's Core is really, really good together. Goldango plus Hammerot. Love those two guys together. As long as there's something better than those two guys, I don't think they should be best two guys. But I think that core in concept is incredible. I used to team with Iron Valiant plus those two. And it was incredible. Never have to worry about hazards going away because you always spin block. I mean, even if you're playing into these guys right here, you can run like balloon variants and things like that to try and check them. Or you at least like make them think about knocking off. So big fan of Goldango. Great Pokemon. Alright, next up. Wochizzy. Unfortunately, we're getting down to a couple of the bad guys down here. There's definitely some bad ones. And Wochizzy is unfortunately one of them. Very bad typing. Bulky, but very bad typing. So that alone is going to make him go all the way down here. He's definitely better than, like, Arboliva. But that's about it. And that's what it comes down to. It's just bad defensive typing. Next up is Tingluski, though. Tingluski is going to go up here in A tier. You need hazards, Tingluski's got you. If you need one thing and it's hazards, Tingluski's got you. He's also got you if you need something really bulky, annoying. Body press, ruination, get things down to half. Solid stab and earthquake plus throat chop, and you know, rock coverage as well as heavy stun. Like honestly, an annoying Pokemon to switch into. There's matchups where banded Tinglu goes crazy, or the tried and true weakness policy lead Tinglu is also really annoying. So overall, really strong Pokemon. I'm gonna adjust this so that we can see a little bit more. Go down a little bit more. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Down a little bit more. Right, we're gonna go there. If it ends up rolling over a little bit, we'll adjust it and we'll show you the picture at the end. Next up though, we have Chimpao, who's banned, and then we have Chiyusuke, who's gonna go right here in S tier as well, probably behind these guys. I think the one thing that Chiyu struggles with is speed tier, because very often it needs to run a Scarf, which means not picking up the Okos it needs, and with its typing and weakness rocks, it means it's probably dying, and with the specs, it's a nuke on everything. Everything dies, but it's outsped and revenged by a lot with base 100 speed, so I think that kind of holds it back. Other than that, though, I mean, if you need a wall breaker, as someone who's just drafted this guy, with the Pokemon we're going to look at in 2 Pokemon, really strong. Next up, though, is my favorite Pokemon of the generation, design-wise. It's Big Roaring Moon. I mean, we have a logo based on him. Shouts to the Carolina Roaring Moon, BBR Season 8 champions, or BBR Season 7 champions. It's going to go here in A tier, but that's all I can put it. Now, again, considering it's Terra banned, very, very broken with Terra. Without, though, it really lacks damage output and really just not pick up the KOs you want. Fairies are just always going to permacheck you. Those Iron Heads aren't doing enough. And then you're getting revenged or forced out and burning your booster, which is really, really difficult. I think it's much better as like a Scarf or a Band guy without Terra. Just you turning around, facilitating, knocking off items. So that's cool, but yeah, overall, Mon just struggles a little bit. But now we have Valiant, and Valiant's going to go up here in S tier. After using it for just 2 total weeks now, going into 3 weeks in BBR, 4th wall break, I can confirm that this guy is incredibly strong. Really forces crazy damage and crazy progress. Whether it be a physical attack or special mix, It's fast, it's strong, it sets up and wins, or it just kills everything so the rest of your team can win. Really, really great Pokemon. Gotta kind of deal with its bad Spadef, but otherwise, there's not really a flaw in this Pokemon. And again, this is also considering it's Terra banned, because you should not be letting the Iron Valiant Terra in your league. Please don't do that. So yeah, great Pokemon. Next up is Walking Wizzy, because we are not doing Rhydon. Those guys are broken. Next up is Walking Wizzy, though, and oh, I told you I'm not doing that. We're gonna go ahead and put this guy here in A tier. I think he's definitely solid on Sun, but I think he is only good at that niche, and I think that alone kind of keeps him in A tier for me. Whereas a lot of the other guys, they like really appreciate Sun, maybe. A lot of the Paradox guys, I feel like Wake needs Sun. He was designed with Sun in mind. However, very, very over centralizing on those builds, but a little bit tough outside of them. So I'll put it there. Another guy who's just terrible and is going to be Iron Leaves. Now I think with Terra, this guy has some use. Without it, it's really bad, and it's really hard to justify Terraing your Iron Leaves, and it's going to be at a price point with Terra. It's not going to allow you to Terra it plus a high tier, so unfortunately, not worth it. Grass Psychic is really bad. Grass Psychic is really bad. It's just not push the damage you want it to. Next up is Dipplin. This guy's going to go here in D tier. I mean, he's pretty terrible. Bad ability. Decently bulky, but just draft Appleton, bro. Please just draft Appleton. Alright, next up, we have Sinistra, who's going to go here in B tier. Another really solid Pokemon. I like this guy a lot, actually. Really bulky, heat proof on a grass type is really solid. Strength stat, can Calm Mind and win that way. Machagacha, spreads burns and things of the sort, which is also really cool. So, also gets Scald, which is another cool tool on a grass type. So, big ups to that guy. Like him a lot. Next up, we have Big Ogre Dogertson. I like this guy a lot. I'm going to go ahead and put him in A tier. I can't put him above Slithering. I'm going to put him in B tier. I like this guy a lot, though. Tough defensive typing. I think with Terra, he's awesome, though. Again, just having, like, a knockoff that poisons 30% of the time, like, badly poisons 30% of the time, is really broken. Having fighting moves that do that is really broken. Having any moves that just 30% poisons on everything is really broken, and that's kind of like the thing with Toxic Chain. And I think that Okidogi is like the best mod at using that ability, which is awesome. Guard Dog makes it immune to Intimidate, which is cool. Can bulk up, can be AV, can be Scarf, can be banned, bunch of things. Can be defensive with a Rocky Helmet. I loved it in GPU. All right, next up we have Monkey Dory, probably the second best of these guys. We're gonna go ahead and put it in low B tier, probably. Solid speed tier. Somebody told me that this was, I think it was John, was like, this is just like better Gengar. No, he's worse than Gengar. Worse speed tier. I think the momentum and punch on U-turn is cool, but I think it's kind of like forcing a click and does a lot of time because it really does not put enough damage on the things that it's not hitting super effectively. So it's really hard to justify it. And it's a Pokemon that where Okidogi really takes advantage of what is it called? Toxic Chain. Because Steel types don't switch into it, and Poison types often don't switch into it. Poison types don't switch into Monkey Dory, but Steel types do. So it's not the best user of that ability. It has Focus Blast to hit them, which is nice. It's just you kind of have to make that call, or you're not doing a lot of damage to them. So, yeah, a little bit tough. Then we have Pheasantdrippity, who's also going to go at the back end of B tier. Really solid typing defensively, but really passive offensively. And is the worst user of Toxic Chain. So that's where he's going to go. Alright, next up, where are we at? They got the Ogres. We're going to rank the Ogres in order. Now, this is assuming that Ogre Fire is Terra banned. The other three are actually typically allowed to Terra and have become top-end metagame threats. Have become incredible with Terra. Ogre Fire is broken with Terra. However, it's not very good without Terra, in my opinion. I'm actually going to go ahead and put it at the top. I want to put it at the top of... Yeah, I'm going to put it at the bottom of A. I think there's still a lot of potential in it, but being Rocks Week and Item Locked and not being able to Terra, it's a little bit tough. Corner. I'm prepping for week 3 right now. I'll tell you right now, I hate this guy. He's so difficult to switch into. We're going to go ahead and put Ogre Corner a little bit higher in A tier. The best lead in Pokemon Draft League. Shouts to the JJDL. But we're going to put it in A tier. Great Pokemon, really strong. 100% accurate rock move, which is awesome as a physical attacker. Then we have Ogre Teal with Terra has been incredible. I used it in one of my DPL games too, and just the option of being getting that immediate +1 plus having an item plus those really strong Ivy Cudgels and knockoffs, Stomping Tangent, it gets good coverage on top of that. This guy definitely deserves an A tier slot considering you're Terra, in my opinion. And then we have Ogre Water, who is incredible with Terra allowed on it. really, really freaking strong. And the speed F boost is really nice in facilitating your own endgame setups and things like that. So definitely deserves an S tier slot, in my opinion. Next up, we have Big Archaludon, a guy I haven't tried myself, but a guy I really want to try. I'm actually going to put him at the top of A tier, a little bit behind Screen Tail. Offensively looks really strong, can also Iron Defense Body Press, which is great, can also Stealth Rock, can also SD, which is pretty darn interesting. But a lot of times you just run Assault Vest with your crazy coverage and clicking a button with your, pseudo-legendary base stat total, which is pretty cool. Next up, we have Hydrapple. This guy's terrible. You get to go with Brian Hands. Goodbye. Next. Okay. No, I gotta put him a little higher. Okay, he's not as bad as Brian Hands. We'll put him above Wo-Chen. He's definitely better than Wo-Chen. He's definitely better than these guys. Yeah, we'll put him behind Tocho. I unironically rather spend less points to get Tocho. Okay, next up we have Gouging Fire. I'm gonna go ahead and put this guy personally at the top of A tier when it comes to non-Terra. I think Terra is broken on gouging. Do not allow Terra. But if we're talking non-Terra Gouging Fire, I think it's definitely an S tier Pokemon. We're gonna go ahead and put it above Chiyu. I think it's better than Chiyu. I think it struggles without Terra sometimes, but like the damage output is crazy. It's so bulky. It's so strong. The stab typing is incredible offensively and defensively. It's really hard to, put this guy in a lower than S. So I'm not gonna. That's a little silly. Next up is my GOAT, Raging Biggie Bolter. We're gonna go ahead and put this guy in S tier. I think when it comes to Terra, this guy is absolutely incredible, and without Terra, it's still very good. I don't think it should be Terra banned, and I think if you draft this thing, you should kind of plan it being Terra, but with its crazy bulk, Calm Mind, plus Dragon Electric, stab, and then maybe one other coverage move coming from your Terra Blast, it's really great. Assault Vest is great, Boots 4 attacks is great, I mean, Specs is incredible. I used it in TGS, and I had a bad season, and this guy was like 30 kills. Really, really awesome Pokemon. Incredibly bulky and incredibly strong. Which is just my kind of guy. He's Iron Hands-esque. I think he's better than Iron Hands, to be honest, at that exact job. So yeah, I'm a big Bolt fan. Next up, we have Iron Bolter. Now, I guess this is tough. We're gonna put this guy at the probably bottom of A tier. Tough, because I think this guy's a little broken with Terra with Booster SD. But I also haven't seen it, so I don't know if I can 100% say it. I think it really lacks damage output without Terra, personally. So I'm going to put it bottom of A. If it can Terra, it probably shoots up this list. I don't know. Do with that information what you want. Iron Crown is a Pokemon I've seen do super well of late. And I want to put it in A tier. Again, as a Terramon, I've seen it do really, really well. Really, really super Mickey through a lot of teams with booster speed and then like Calm Mind, Iron Defense, Stored Power, and then like, Body Press or Focus Blast, something like that. It can be really, really out of hand and really annoying, but also like Assault Vest variants are cool. I've seen Choice Specs do really well as well. Tachyon Cut is also a really cool move, so yeah, I think he deserves an A tier spot. Then Terapagos. Big Terapagos. Obviously, this is a Terra banned Terapagos. I'm going to go ahead and put it in S tier. I haven't seen enough of this guy in the format to really, really determine if I like him a lot or not. So I think putting him right behind Palafin is kind of fair. I think it really can do a lot. It can, Rapid Spin and, Speed Boost that way. Or it can also Rock Polish and sweep through games with Calm Mind. Or Meteor Beam, has crazy coverage, has Toxic, has Rocks if you even need it. Please don't Rocks, though. So really, really versatile in that regard. I think if it had Recovery, it'd be broken. Thankfully it doesn't, but it can Resto Chesto, which is cool. It has better multi-scales and ability, which is a big selling point, right? You kind of force into boots in a lot of matchups, but is that a bad thing? I don't think so. It's already a great item. You're not just doing it for the ability. You also just don't have to take Hazard Ball again. And then we have Big Pecky. Big Pecky is going to go up here in A tier. Amol probably wants him in S tier, but Big Pecky is going to go in A tier. Incredibly physically bulky to where you can very often just go max speed F and not really die to anything. Stab combination is incredible. Malignant Chain is a broken move. Parting Shot around, Nasty Spot recover, Nightshade. That's all you need. It's going to do a great job. So, great Pokemon overall. And not a lot of Pokemon that can really beat it outside of just like raw blitzing special attackers. But that is going to be our tier list for Gen 9. Let me know what you guys think. Again, obviously, we're still in this generation, so maybe I'm, judging things incorrectly or poorly, but that's what I think. Really. If you guys enjoyed this series, and again, if you have any more ideas for us going forward for a new weekly series, it's not just us playing Draft League battles, let me know. I want to, push out more content to you guys, but you know what you want to see. But yeah, thanks for watching, y'all. See y'all next time. Later.